The Greek word here is nekros, for the dead, spiritually dead, destitute of life. One that has breath is last lifeless. So now the son is lying lifeless. And then the Messiah takes him up. I think what I'll do is I'll revisit what happens afterwards and just go straight into the account that's in Luke. Luke chapter 9, verse 38. And behold, a man of the company cried out, saying, Master, I beseech thee, look upon my son, for he is mine only child. And lo, I think that's why I thought he was a child, because of this description here. But that may not necessarily mean that his age is below 13. And lo, a spirit taketh him. So again, it's described a bit differently. And he suddenly crieth out, and it teareth him that he foameth again, and bruising him hardly, departeth from him. Okay, interesting. So I'm understanding here that the spirit was entering him and then leaving him. That's very interesting. And the reason why I say this is very interesting, and this does relate to a theory that I hold, is that as much as the physical parasites that reside in a person are means by which, well, let me rephrase that. Theory in which the physical parasites that reside in a person's body are the vessels. Those are the very vessels by which devils enter into people and afflict them. I really like this because I feel like this right here is a very key scripture in tying together that concept that these physical organisms are the conduit for, or one such conduit for demons to afflict people, and perhaps one of the, from my understanding so far and experience, one of the main avenues for devils to enter into people, which is why, as I established in a previous lesson and will continue, as you'll continue to see me discuss in further detail, why cleansing the temple, our bodies, is so important to moving closer to Yahawah and Yahawashi. Because if these physical vessels, these conduits, are not removed from the human body, then it gives these devils a struggling to find the word, a super highway, a highly conductive pathway. I think I'll revisit the topic of conductivity, because oftentimes you'll see relationships between demonic activity and electricity, and the human body itself is run off of electrical exchanges. I've heard it described as a giant battery, which isn't totally accurate, but accurately conveys the idea that electricity is the essential component of how the human body functions. Let's go back to the scripture. And lo, a spirit taketh him, and he suddenly crieth out, and it teareth him, that he foameth again, and bruising him hardly departeth from him. So let's take a look at the word bruising. To break in pieces, shiver, to tread down. So not necessarily physical bruises, right? Someone might read this and say, oh, there's physical bruises appearing on the guy because of the demon. No, not exactly. But if you watch a horror movie about demonic activity, they were probably inspired by the scriptures to include that in there, right? The bruises appearing on people and whatever else. But clearly, we have a much less supernatural picture of what's going on here, which, again, in my mind, continues to bridge the gap between this phenomenon of physical afflictions and possession by evil spirits. Bruising him and hardly departeth. Let's take a look at, first off, hardly departeth. Hardly meaning, let's see, this is from the Greek word mogos. It's an adverb, so it's describing how it departs. Well, as far as the English goes. Okay, hardly. With difficulty. Okay, so probably a lot of straining and it departs. Let's take a look at the word depart. G672. Apokorio, perhaps, is how you say it. Depart, to go away. Okay. So, with great pains does it exit him. So, again, interesting. It will come on him at times, remove off of him at other times. And what I'm positing or putting forth here is that it perhaps very likely was a tapeworm or some other type of parasite that was the conduit by which this devil was moving in and out of this person. And quite possibly I will put forth and hope to establish further in later videos is that had that physical parasite not been there, again, this possession would not have been possible. I say that through the spirit, but it is something I will continue to put thought into. Here it says, it establishes that the disciples, let me just read the verse. Luke chapter 9 and verse 40. And I besought thy disciples to cast him out, and they could not. So they didn't have the ability to cast him out. And again, later on, and I think seek to establish is, again, the description of the carnal process of how they would have or would not have been able to cast the devil out, which would also relate to electricity and electrical potential if that relationship isn't clearly established. Right now, I understand how that might be a bit of a jump for someone that is just starting to get into this. Again, it's a topic that I will continue to delve further into in subsequent lessons. Luke 9, verse 41, and Yahawashi answering said, reading this for the third time, second time in this lesson, O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you and suffer you? Bring thy son hither. Verse 42, and as he was yet a-coming, the devil threw him down and tare him. So, another convulsion. And the scriptures describe it as the devil doing it. So let's take a look at this word devil, G1140. As we saw on Etim online, Daemonian. Daemonian. Forgive me if I'm changing the pronunciation. The divine power, deity, divinity. Again, this relates to what we read before, how heathens worshipped these intelligences. A spirit, a being inferior to the Most High, of course, superior to men, well, certainly not to the Messiah, and not to certain Israelites, as we know that the apostles, by inference just from reading these scriptures in Luke, we can infer that the apostles were in fact able to cast out devils, lesser ones than this particular incident describes, however. And then the final definition here, evil spirits or the messengers and ministers of the, says of the devil. I'm assuming what whoever wrote this is trying to say of the spiritual devil, Satan, who is ultimately a minister of the Most High Yahawah. Threw him down. Again, what I see here is a most likely what would be described today as epileptic seizure, right, to rend. Rather, to distort, convulse of a demon, causing convulsions in a man possessed. Again, to dash down, hurl to the ground, as we read earlier, a common occurrence in cases of demon possession and epilepsy. And Yahawashi rebuked. Let's take a look at this word rebuked. Rebuke, charge, straightly charge, to show, honor to, no. Here we go, to admonish or charge sharply. So this is very interesting here because